someone asked, wanted to hear your take on the interview stuff. Personally, I don't like Spiral Abyss. It's kind of bummed me out that they didn't give us anything to look forward to. The point of characters and weapons is to use them. I'll be completely honest, their decision to not incorporate endgame combat content doesn't affect me, realistically speaking. And so from my own personal perspective, I'm not that upset about it. Repeatable endgame content has never been my motivation for playing Genshin, despite the fact that I spend money in the game, that I focus on, you know, leveling up my characters, building my characters, getting, you know, really good artifacts. On a personal level, I'm not affected by it. But I also understand that I am not the only person who plays the game with the mindset that I play it with. And so I am rather empathetic to those people who do play Genshin and who are contributing to its success that aren't able to be catered to the fact of the matter is I'm being catered to and I'm not asking to be catered to. I'm not saying, Hoyoverse, can you do more story content? Can you put more lore into your game? What I want is already what they are fundamentally producing for the game. So I'm gonna be the last person that asks for things in this game because I'm already getting everything I want. That's not to say I don't want what the meta players want. Most people's opinions that I've heard about this who focus on story characters and lore are like, too bad, so sad, I don't care, it doesn't affect me. And I feel like that's it's just an apathetic way to look at it, because you're pretty much like dismissing a portion of the community who does contribute to the success of the game that you're able to continue playing because of those players. I feel like the average whale doesn't really give a shit about the story, but you can't deny that whales contribute to the game far more than free-to-play players or people who don't care about endgame content. And so, like, regardless of what MiHoYo's decision is, I think it says a lot about how the community treats each other when news like this comes out. Some people are championing it. Some people are saying like, oh, this was never meant to be a combat-focused game, even though Hoyoverse gives you all of the bells and whistles that says otherwise. To feign ignorance on that is a little frustrating. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't affect me because I'm not in that demographic of people that only care about the combat. People think the combat of Genshin is one of the best in gaming, and the system of its combat with like reaction comps is compelling and addicting to a lot of people, and I agree with that. Like, I don't care about Spiral Abyss. I don't care about getting combat-oriented content, but I still do it. You know what I mean? I don't care. Let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't care about it. I don't care about combat-oriented content being my source of content as a YouTuber and a streamer. I still like doing that kind of stuff, right? I still like doing the combat itself, but like a lot of content creators, that's their bread and butter when it comes to content for their audience, for their channels, for whatever. So they're going to value that far more than I am. But that doesn't mean that I don't care to have that content in the game at all. I don't know. Like, Spiral Abyss for me is just like, I fall asleep, bro. I would much rather, I actually like the limited combat content that we get every patch versus Spiral Abyss. Maybe it's because Spiral Abyss is too much of the same. Maybe it's because like realistically speaking, like that's not my bread and butter when it comes to Genshin. So it's just not going to resonate with me the same way it will someone whose entire channel is focused on guides and builds and things of that nature. And I don't think that's going to change. I don't think people's interest in combat and wanting to get their account stronger and push their team comps and their builds to the furthest level it can get to. But I understand. So I made a tweet yesterday, and the tweet that I tried to make like a car analogy. The way I described it was like, MiHoYo lets you take your account to 200 miles per hour, but the game's difficulty is limited at 60 miles per hour. So what I'm basically saying is like, why does Hoyoverse allow us to make our account so strong if there is nothing in the game to match that scaling? That's my issue with the entire thing. It's not the fact that Hoyoverse, I mean, I guess it's one and the same, but like, why does Hoyoverse let me take my character to level 90? Why do they let me take my weapon to level 90? Why do they let me take 5-star artifacts all to level 20? Why do they let me buy constellations to make my character stronger? Why do they let me pick up to 4 characters to create a ridiculously strong team composition? Why let me get that strong? I'm not the best judge of other people's sense of humor. If I don't need to be that strong. It's like, well, that's optional, but like at the same time, like you have to get stronger in this game. Like it's not an option to level up. It's a requirement. Like you have to level up in this game. Otherwise, you're not making any progress. Nobody is still playing unless you're doing like some crazy challenge for like a YouTube video, which I've seen a couple of those. Nobody is running into Inazuma or Sumeru, having played this game for how long it's been out, at like level 20 or level 30 characters. Unless you haven't leveled up your adventure rank, which then you can't do a certain amount of content because it's locked behind adventure rank cap. If we are to take the interview at face value, to me it doesn't make sense why Hoyoverse would give us all of these tools, push our accounts to S rank damage output when we're getting C, D level difficulty. The cynical part of me feels like they do that to cater to those people who care about meta and numbers and data. And that's where it stops for them. It stops for those people where it's like, that's what we did for you guys. We let you be overpowered. You'll never be able, we do not intend to put anything in the game that will match that. Because, no pun intended, but they got you. You know what I mean? Like, that's the cynical part of me. The cynical part of me thinks that that could be an angle. It's like casting a wide net, and some people that are interested in meta and data and numbers and combat, they'll be swooped in by those enticing features. That's the cynical part of me. The optimistic part of me says that Hoyoverse, while they didn't even have to do the interview, maybe they didn't think they would get these fastball questions, because they didn't really pull any punches on anything. They really got to the heart of a lot of what the community's issues with the games are. Like, they address, I'll just say, I give major kudos to the person who constructed the interview questions from Gamespot, because those are questions that like any player would want to ask the developer who cares about that kind of stuff. So they definitely went in there with the agenda of getting some answers for long-standing questions that that a subset of the community wanted. There was no like, oh, well, how do you feel about the work you guys are putting it? Like, none of this like fucking, you know, blowing smoke up their own ass. Like, there was no softball questions in my opinion. They even asked some questions that I'm genuinely in, that cater to my interest. Like, hey, there's a lot of people that weren't able to do any of the limited story content in the game. They reference like Fischl and Mona meeting in 1.1 and Scaramouche, his first introduction in version 1.1, and that's compelling to me. Like, I even care about that, and I care about that for new players, and I already did that content myself. So like, even that stuff was enticing because that's something that I've always wanted them to be able to do. We mentioned that in the survey video that I did a while back. Optimistic part of me feels like if Hoyoverse is doing any of that stuff, I would much rather them surprise us by just announcing it officially and confirming it in an interview, setting those expectations, and then people are just waiting. I know that's copium to say right now, because everybody is very volatile in their response to this entire, like, everybody right now is just very much like, Genshin is over, nothing that I want as an endgame player is gonna happen. It's confirmed, they said it. I don't even know why I'm playing the game anymore. I understand that reaction, and I feel like it's valid, especially if you've been like, you were huffing hopium this entire time and now realize like, oh, it actually might not ever be what I want it to be, or what it should be, or what it has the potential to be. You know, everyone's experience is different, but I'm trying to be as empathetic here as I can, because I understand, I can at least try to empathize and put myself in the shoes of another player. I don't care about combat content. I've never advocated that it not be in the game just because I don't like it. And I feel like people's actions and how they play the game speaks more than what people are saying. Hoyoverse would not be like, oh, we don't want to do combat content. And here's another thing too, the fucking question that they asked, like the answer that they gave, some of the answers they gave dead ass like pissed me off. Like the resin one, they were like, oh, you ever gonna put resin, you ever gonna increase resin, the resin cap, or increase the recharge rate of resin? And they completely deflect, and they're like, you asked us about resin, but we're gonna tell you about what resin does for you in the game. And we're gonna tell you about all of the additional resources we allow players to have. So basically what we're saying is, we give you guys enough stuff already. Stop asking. Game, that really pissed me off, because it's like, sooner. I can't imagine that someone would say that in a face-to-face interview. Like, I'm asking you, I don't know, like, I'm asking you, like, a simple straight, like, I'm asking you a yes or no question, and you convert to, like, completely corpus speech. Like, oh, well, Resin is used. Like, they just give you a textbook definition of what we already know Resin does. The game's been out for 2 fucking years. Who the hell are you talking to about that, you know? I wish the interviewer actually asked about, like, do you plan on cutting Resin cost in half now that we're going to have our, what is it? Dvalin, Andreas, Child, Ajdaha, Signora, Raiden, Shogun, our 7th weekly boss. To where now it's gonna cost us over 300 Resin, 330
Good
Resin
deeds
to go through all 7
and
weekly
bad.
bosses now. Do you plan on cutting the
end,
cost of Resin in half with
all
the
will be
addition of
placed
more weekly
upon the
bosses?
scales.
Or do you plan on just cutting out the cost at all? I know it's not a face-to-face interview, but the way that they answer questions is kind of like, bro, you're talking to me like you're a fucking robot, you know? And I get it, it's corpus speech, but like at the same time, these are answers your community is asking. You're not talking to the interviewer, you're talking to your player base when you say stuff like that. I don't understand why people complaining about Resin in 1.0 and 1.1 resulted in 40 additional Resin back then. But in Hoyoverse's eyes, they're basically saying Resin is the same level of value that it was in 1.1 and 1.2 when we increased the cap, as it is 2 years later with twice as many weekly bosses, like 10 times the amount of domains that you have to farm for specific characters. I think the pool of characters has increased by like 100% from day 1 to now, I think, or it's getting there. And it's like,
Luck can swing the
not
results
enough
of a
Resin
single game,
to go around now,
but it's bound to run
compared
out
to
sooner
when the
or
game
later.
first came out. And I don't understand how they're unaware that as your game gets bigger, you kind of have to scale your resources to compensate. Otherwise, newer players is one thing, but like feeling of progression is just going to be non-existent. Like, I genuinely still feel very strongly. If anyone hasn't seen it, I did a 2-hour video about everything that all of my criticisms and feedback, myself and my community for Genshin Impact. If you haven't seen it, it's on my main YouTube channel. It's on my Genshin Impact. It's on my MurderofBirds Impact channel. And it pretty much addresses like a lot of things that the community wants. And even in that, I said I advocated for world level 9, world level 10, more Resin. A lot of the things that Hoyoverse pretty much just like swerved in that interview. I guess to go back to the initial question, I don't care about combat content as content for my stream, my channel, for my viewers. Hoyoverse has been catering to what I look for in Genshin since day 1. I have never been demanding really of anything that this game puts out because it does all of the things that I enjoy. I know I'm very unique in that position. I know that I don't speak unity, both the lore people that focus on things and the endgame meta players that focus on what they like about the game. I can only really speak from my own experience, and for me, I like how Genshin functions as a product. I like the story. I like talking to NPCs. I like reading a bunch of stuff in the game. I know people are like, oh, when I play a video game, I want to play. I don't want to read. I'm kind of like a mix of both. Like, I enjoy reading and learning about the world as much as I am actively interacting with it. I like learning about all of the characters and playing as all the characters and getting different team comps and having the gameplay be varied and dynamic. Am I saying that it's the best game ever and it doesn't need any changes? No, and I've never said that, but I can see how my enjoyment of the game and all of the things that I just laid out can be interpreted as, oh, well, you're a fucking white knight Hoyoverse shill that will never complain about the company or think anything bad of them. Really sucks when you really like something that other people have a problem with, because you end up rustling feathers when you're just staying in your own lane. Another thing that also I can relate to with this is Ruby. For those of you who don't know, I have a main YouTube channel. It's just MurderofBirds, and I focus on this animated web series called Ruby that I've been covering since the show came out back in 2013. And it's so crazy to me because very much like how I started Genshin from day 1 and loved it from day 1, I started Ruby from day 1 and I've enjoyed it through and through. And it frustrates me as an enjoyer of media, as an enjoyer of video games, web series, anime. It really pisses me off when I'm in the crossfire of other people that want something that they are struggling to enjoy. They want changes so that way they can enjoy it. And they view anybody continues to enjoy that thing as like a problem because they feel like I have greater influence on that product than they do, when they're just as relevant and just as valid in how they consume or enjoy the content as I am. I'm not out here telling people, you don't like Ruby? Well, maybe you should just drop the show and watch something else. It might not be for you. If anything, I hope that they're able to find a semblance of enjoyment in the thing, and I hope that their criticisms are taken seriously. But I feel like the big divide between the community is that these people have more say over how Hoyoverse decides to change their game than this subset of people. And at the end of the day, the only person that really knows that is Hoyoverse. It's no surprise, and I found this to be really shocking. They actually said in the interview, not everybody is interested in must read. And I guarantee you, for the millions of players that play the game, I guarantee you, majority of people that play this game do not play Spiral Abyss, and they have the data to back that up. So in their eyes, they're seeing it kind of like a mountain. You know who you know another person that I think of when I think of Genshin? Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Super Smash Bros. He was also someone that a lot of people would advocate to make the game more competitive, like have more of a competitive edge, like Melee. Like, oh, make your next Smash Bros. Game kind of like Melee. And I remember Sakurai saying something along the lines of, once you do that, once you start catering to a super competitive audience, it creates kind of like a pyramid structure where the most dedicated people are at the top,
will be
the higher you go up, the fewer the people are. Whereas you really want to have like a middle ground, or really like the base is like the general casuals that will literally just like consume the content at their own pace and kind of not be committed to anything. But the more niche and focused you get, the higher you go up, like the higher the intensity of like your interest in the game, but the fewer those people are. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to cater to that passionate yet limited audience. And so Sakurai kind of found a middle ground, I think, with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, where it wasn't exactly Melee, but it wasn't exactly Brawl either. I think Melee and Brawl are like the polar opposites of what Smash could be, and they found a middle ground in Ultimate. And that's just something that I think about too, because I think like that's another thing too. Like there was almost like a war between casual players and competitive players when it came to Smash. And I feel like that's kind of the same vibe I get from Genshin. You have people that are casual, that don't care about leveling up, that don't care about damage, that don't care about things that another subset of community members do care about. But the problem is, those people that care about meta and numbers and builds and guides, while valid, I guarantee you they are the minority. So from a company standpoint, you know, it's understandable why they're putting that at the bottom of their priorities, or rather they're probably not even thinking about it at all. And yeah, like the people that feel unheard and left out, despite them being just as invested as you and me, they have a right to be upset. They have a right to be upset and still choose to play the game. I don't like when people are like, don't play the game, then play something else. Like, I don't think anyone should tell anybody else how to play or how to spend their time or their money. Hoyoverse this is the problem that I have too with the company. I hate how much they advocate that we share our feedback, that we tell them what we want to see. Every patch there's a survey. Every so often there's like a major survey where they ask you about overarching systems in the game, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of. I hate that they do that. And then when a news publication publishes and asks direct questions that the community has also answered, and they say, no, 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 maybe we're thinking about it, we've always had ideas, no, that tells me that they don't really look into those surveys as much as we think they do, or as much as we hope that they do. Because if you're willing to tell a publication no, 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 maybe they're saving face because it's a public, you know, it's a public matter, right? Like ultimately those surveys are pretty much confidential with Hoyoverse, with how they want to implement content and in what way. I don't know. I just really feel like community is pretty much at each other's throats right now. You got meta players that are touting the end of Genshin because lore fans are ruining the experience they're ruining Genshin's potential. And then you have casual lore fans who are just like, oh, imagine playing Genshin and not liking the story, could not be me. Like, everyone is just really kind of at each other's throats right now, and it's created a bit of I don't want to say civil war, that's a little hyperbolic, but it's definitely created like a schism in the community, and it's done more harm than good. And a lot of people feel very entitled about how they play the game. I feel like a lot of people feel like the way they play the game is how everyone should play the game, and I disagree with that entirely. I'm able to still kind of interact with and get along with and find some common ground with people that focus on meta, like Zajef, right? Like Travis and Mark. But I'm also able to kind of appreciate and enjoy the content that some people in the lore and theory crafting community, or the people who enjoy the story can enjoy, like Bran Online, like Teyvat Historia, you know, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. And I also feel like a lot of people literally just put their entire identity into Genshin. Like Genshin is a part of their identity, especially on Twitter. Or however young or old these people are. Like, I just feel like a lot of people feel like they have a horse in this race of what Hoyoverse decides to add versus what they don't decide to add. And it's just really unfortunate. I really don't like how community pretty much turned on each other overnight. And some people feel like they've lost an important part of why they play the game. Like, I watched MTash. I spent all last night just binge watching everyone's opinions on this topic. I watched Smack Daddy King's video, I watched Tectone's video, I watched MTash's video, I watched a little bit of Sevi's video. I've been watching like nonstop. Like, I've watched Zyox's video. I've just been hearing a lot of different perspectives. I watched Flip's video, and yeah, I don't know. Oh, and I think I'm gonna take this and make it its own video at this point, just because I'm kind of rambling about it. I'm not recording, so the quality might be a little low. But another thing that like really kind of it upset me a little bit was just how much people were kind of downplaying the idea of endgame content being an anxiety factor for players, and a bunch of people are like downplaying that. I feel like a lot of people just took that as literal like depression, anxiety, like shit that people deal with in real life on a serious level, and they were like, there's no way Genshin is causing people to have like midlife crises and shit like that. But I just feel like it adds to people's compulsion to need to do certain things. I feel like that's what Hoyoverse meant, but it's also kind of contradictory, because that's literally what a gacha game is functionally designed to do. Like, fear of missing out is basically a fundamental structure in gacha game. So for them to be like, we don't want to have people get anxious about doing content that they might not want to do in fear of missing out on free rewards, but that's literally what every limited edition patch is. I'll be honest with you, I experienced that for the first time. For those who don't know, I did not know that there was a quest item after finishing during Fischl's drama Phantasmagoria like Raven theater thing, and I don't have that item in my inventory, and I like obsessed over that long after the patch ended. I didn't realize that there was an item with that quest until I was already in Canada and Sumeru was already out. But I'll be honest with you, like, I was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I missed that item. How did I miss that item? I actually don't have something in the game now. Like, I literally obsessed about that for like 2 days, and because I left for Canada and I wasn't able to finish that I wasn't able to finish that world quest before I left, so I had to watch it on YouTube. And so I know what they're talking about, but that's also fundamentally built into the game. If you didn't finish all of the content, you probably didn't get the Koseki Maru like boat model, or you didn't get that crown that you needed for that next character, or something. Like, it goes all the way back to 1.1 with Leonard, and it even exists now with the Mondstadt event. So it's weird how in one way it's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're like, we don't want people to deal with anxiety of doing content that they might feel like they're forced to do, otherwise they're missing out. Nowhere to run. Let's also put limited event content with limited weapons and limited resources, that if you don't do it within the time frame that we've allotted, you also miss out on that. You know what I mean? I almost feel it's kind of like a bogus excuse, and can't help but feel like I don't know about any of you, but I got some energy from what they said, which was, not everybody is interested in Musk Reef. I kind of felt like that was, I don't know why, but I felt like that was them saying, like, you're in the like, if you care about Spiral Abyss, you're in the minority. I could be wrong about that, but like, that wording kind of like, I interpreted it that way based on the wording. Not everybody's interested in Musk Reef. Well, no shit, because it's optional. And this is something that constantly comes up. I also am not a fan of how people over the course of Genshin we have always dunked on, not everybody, let me rephrase that. Like, there's definitely been some times where I've been in certain streams and the streamer would be like, yeah, like, you're like, I'm not a lore nerd, I don't care about this shit, this is like, the story's not that good anyway. It's like, usually that comes from people who are not even invested in the story at all, so like their opinion of the lore is very, like, shallow. So I can understand someone putting in the work and understanding and being able to make having like an educated opinion. Most people are just like, oh, it's too much work for me to dedicate myself to, so I'm not gonna do it. Similarly, there are definitely people that I know and that I've seen that have like ran themselves into the ground with Genshin because commitment of leveling up your characters, weapons, artifacts, talents is too much for them to want to focus on, and it's too much of a dedication. And I feel like that's also a reason why I don't really care about combat. Kind of funny now that I think about it. Kind of funny because like both sides require an intense level of dedication, in my opinion. Care about meta, you have to give yourself to leveling up characters, leveling up weapons, leveling up talents, leveling up artifacts, going through that process, building a perfect team, and going about that. And you have to like want to do that kind of stuff. And on the flip side, if you like lore and you want to learn as much about the world of Teyvat and the world building and the characters, then that requires an equal level of dedication. You got to read, you got to talk to NPCs, you got to do quests, and it does. I can see how some people feel like it's homework. I've always kind of liked the fact that the story isn't just all there for me to piece together, and it does require a bit of my input to really like dig deep and understand nuances of the game. That's kind of why I also liked Ruby, because Ruby was kind of the same way, where there is a story in the show, but there's also a story in the soundtrack, story in the external media. And again, I'm a very rare case. I'm not part of the demographic. I'm not a part of the masses when it comes to casual enjoyment or general enjoyment. I don't know, man. I really want to believe that Hoyoverse just said that stuff to kind of put out be as vague as possible. You didn't say yes, but you didn't say no either. Like, I think for everything that they said, it was, we don't plan on doing that at this time. And that could very well be true. Just because they're not planning on it now doesn't mean they'll never plan on it. And I know some people are quick to just be like, okay, it's confirmation bias. It's like, oh, well, I knew they were never gonna do it, and they're not saying they're gonna do it, so that just confirms that it's never gonna happen. The only way that that's gonna happen is if Hoyoverse listens and really like takes a chance on that. But like, I don't know. Ultimately, they have the keys, and it's up to them to decide what they want to do. I don't really see player base or the meta player base or the whales of the game like reducing their spending or just deciding I'm gonna boycott spending in Genshin, and that's, vote with your wallet kind of thing, because people are fickle. No one has the wherewithal to really commit to that, not on a grand scale that will affect a multi-billion-dollar company at least. And it is unfortunate that not more unity in that respect, but it's also kind of unrealistic. They would literally have to kill their game overnight for something like that to happen. But I'm still hopeful. I really, really, really hope that they can continue to improve on the game and make changes and adjustments that we want to see, because it might feel like we're taking baby steps, but the game is in a much better state now than it was when the game first came out. All of the it's not perfect, all of the issues haven't been addressed, but to say that the game hasn't improved since day one is would be a lie. But if you've been here since day one, it doesn't feel like that, because you're kind of in the moment with everything. So maybe people in the future will be able to benefit off of that. There's more stuff added to the game, but yeah, I don't know. I completely understand both sides of the argument. I take on it in the most empathetic way possible, because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm an enemy. I don't want anyone to feel like I don't want what's best for the game, because I do. Even if that thing doesn't cater to me. I don't care about Spiral Abyss. I don't care about combat-oriented content, but I'll tell you what, I've done every single combat-oriented thing in the game. So it's not like I don't like doing it. I just don't cater my content around it. And that can't be said for people who don't focus on lore content. So so it kind of feels like they're asking for more than they're getting. It's not even the fact that that's the case. Like, they're asking for more than they're getting, whereas I don't have to ask for anything, and Hoyoverse is watering my crops every 6 weeks. So I just really try to see both sides of the perspective. I humbly agree that Hoyoverse needs to listen to Endgame players and at the very least implement a thing or two, because what they're asking for, what you really have to ask yourself is, what does adding more resin take away from the game? What does adding more repeatable endgame combat-oriented content take away? If you can't give an answer to that, then there's no reason why it shouldn't happen. The only thing that it'll take up is a bit of time and resources for Hoyoverse, but we don't get that until Snezhnaya or Natlin. Well, I would much rather that than it not happen at all. Spiral Abyss is very much in the similar vein. Like, you think a casual player can finish Spiral Abyss? Like a bona fide casual player who gets on, plays 20 minutes a day or an hour a day and hangs out, dicks around with their friends, does a little bit of a quest, gets off. Treat any other thing like a Spiral Abyss doesn't seem like it'll take away from anything. Just additive. It's there if you want it to be there. But I don't know. I feel like I feel like I'm talking in circles now, but that's generally how I feel about it. Yeah, it is kind of depressing to see, because all the videos that I watched yesterday, so many people felt like, it really felt like an us versus them fight. Like that interview told meta players that Genshin developers cater to the casual. That interview told those players that they are not a priority in the eyes of the devs, and that indirectly made those people enemies of players that feel like they should be able to get things that they look forward to in the game just as much as lore fans or whatever. But the difference is lore fans aren't asking for that. That's what Genshin is putting out. It just happens to align with what we like in the game. So it's a little, fundamentally it's different, because meta players are asking for content and not getting it. Lore players aren't asking enough, and we're getting it by virtue of what Hoyoverse wants to do with the game. So it kind of seems like it's an unfair treatment of certain subsets of the community. But I don't know. I wish more people led with empathy with everything that they do, but right now it doesn't seem like, it just seems like this is a very volatile time for people. Who felt like they haven't been heard for the last 2 years. And you gotta understand, like, you have to really put yourself in the shoes of someone. Just imagine asking someone for something for 2 years, and then you finally get word, and they're just like, everything you've been asking for, we haven't even thought about doing. You know, I would feel like shit that if I was in that predicament. But, you know, I can only empathize because I can't relate to that, because I'm not in that camp, but I'm not going to deny other people or that expression of frustration. Yeah, I would also say kind of fuck Twitter in general. Like, Twitter's volatile in and of itself by design. So most people just try to stir the pot, try to be assholes, try to shit on other people's interests. I pretty much don't take much of what anyone says on Twitter seriously. Even myself, I kind of don't take myself seriously on Twitter. But yeah, if you were affected by that, I do feel sorry for how you might be feeling, because I love the game, and it makes me sad to know that someone that loves the game might love the game a little less now, based on the developer, not even based on like themselves. Another thing that I wish that they did, like the Traveler's outfit and costumes. See, the thing is, there were some things in that interview that I actually did enjoy in terms of like interests that I like. So another thing that they asked was about the Traveler getting like commemorative items. Like, remember when we did the Ayaka's story quest and we had like those little masks for the festival? I freaked out because I was like, bro, please give me that as like a wearable item. Like, that's the shit that I like. I like that stuff. It's part of the world. It's a commemorative item that like is a part of Inazuma, and that's something that I want. It's something that I've wanted, and they said that they're always looking into trying to do stuff like that. I wish that they took more of a serious approach when it came to skins. They can make so much fucking money off of skins, but you know, it takes them roughly 6 months to make 2 character skins. That's been the time frame between skins all the way back in Barbara, and then 6 months later we got Kaching and Ningguang, and then 5-6 months later we got Diluc and Fischl. So we'll probably get skins every winter and every summer, and it seems like they could be doing so much more. Like, they could be on some like League of Legends type shit where they're putting out skins on like every other patch and like raking in so much money. Like, the fact that they made the fact that they had the fucking concert promotional art with like Kazuha and you know, all the characters in their like musical getup, like, make that a costume skin line, make that like the musical lineup. Like, League of Legends does that shit too, where they have like the Void Walker set, they have you know, the Blood Moon set. They have like all of these aesthetic sets for characters, and they can make a fucking killing if they did that. But maybe they don't need to. Maybe they make enough money as it is with the overhead that they focus on. Yeah, I wish we could just have stuff like that, like just little trinkets for our characters, whether it be a costume, especially for the Traveler. Like, it sucks that the only type of aesthetic that we can customize with our characters are, like I said, the 2 costumes that come out every 6 months and the Wing Glider that pretty much comes in like 1 color for that region, and that's it. Yeah, the Flower Crown too. Yeah, the Flower Crown for the Aranara. You really made me cry over those little guys, and then I can't even have something to remember them. Like, I have the Flower Crown. It's in my inventory, but I can't wear it like Aether was wearing it in the freaking quest line. No, I wish I could do that. What, you're saying you won't wear a wooden cabinet as a hat? I don't know, man. I just hope the community can bounce back from this. I felt really bad for MTash. Like, MTash was actually getting, like, emotional about the whole thing, and I understand that he is furthest thing from the target audience of this game. The one hope that he wanted for this game that kept him going was, like, ripped from him yesterday. And I understand that it's just a game, but, like, if my account got deleted yesterday, if I woke up tomorrow and found out that someone hacked my account, got into my account, and like fed all of my weapons into like 1-star and 2-star weapons, destroyed all of my artifacts into the strongbox, and like just got rid of all of the shit that I've worked hard to earn over the last 2 years, I would have like a fucking mental breakdown. Not a mental breakdown, that's a little extra, but like I would literally just be contemplating the last 2 years that I just spent on this game. I'd be like, bro, I literally just lost 2 years of my life's investment. And I know it's not the exact same thing, but when you tell MTash, like, and I know I'm using him as an example here, but it's just to illustrate the point of like how he feels is valid. It doesn't matter if it's just a game. It's also his job. So that there's a layer of pressure to like want there to be something salvageable for this game for him to continue to make content, because it changed his life, it changed his channel. But like, that's kind of the equivalent. I feel like I'd be in the same boat in a sense. For Hoyoverse to be like, yeah, everything that you're doing is pointless. Last 2 years is not going to add up to anything that you want in the game, would be the equivalent of someone taking the last 2 years that I put in the game and throwing it away. Yeah. And I'll say this last thing too because I've been chatting about this for a really long time. Endgame content, different for every person that you ask. Genius Invocation TCG game that's coming in a couple of patches. That is permanent endgame content. That is content that is coming to Genshin, that is never going away, and that you can do in perpetuity for as long as this game is out. Spiral Abyss is permanent endgame content that tests combat limits of your account. Genius Invocation TCG might test the intellectual part of your account, or of you as a player, like, because it's a card game, so you gotta have some strategy in there. So maybe instead of doing combat-oriented content as the consistent endgame thing, it's like we'll have a permanent endgame combat content for Spiral Abyss. We'll have a permanent endgame card game. We'll have a permanent endgame this, like, and each thing will be varied in terms of what it is. One's combat, one's a card game, and so on and so forth. And it's permanent, it's never going away, and it's something to do. Yeah, I can understand, and I think that that's valid too for Hoyoverse to want to do. I just wish that they added more to Spiral Abyss than what it currently is, because to be quite honest, like, Spiral Abyss is very bland, and every 2 weeks it cycles, and it doesn't feel any different than it did day one. And that's my biggest fear for the card game too. They're gonna put this card game out and it's not gonna evolve, it's not gonna be innovative, they're just going to add stuff, and they're not really gonna build fundamentally on it. Like, I really like the harmonic event in the Chasm. Like, that combat event, endless waves of enemies until the timer runs out. And you have your your abilities are constantly up. It was just like a massive dopamine run. Like, that could be a cool, repeatable endgame content thing. Labyrinth Warriors event with Shiki Taisho. Like, those were cool because the domains were actually explorable and they were different. They have things they can do. They just don't want to focus solely on one aspect of the game, which is combat. Yeah, the Vibro Crystal. Yeah, that's what the event was. I think it's like Vibro Crystal Harmonics or something like that. All in all, it's a shit show out there. It's real in them streets, and I just hope that people can express themselves in a respectful manner and not tear down other people or laugh at other people's affected misfortune of things they wanted in the game that aren't going to happen anymore. That's all I really hope happens. And what a lot of people expect too is that Genshin's issues will be fixed by proxy of other games. So while Genshin will never have the combat aspect of it improved upon, then the Zone Zero seems like it'll be that solution. So it kind of seems like Hoyoverse could also be deliberately leaving things out of one game and then fulfilling it in another game to get people into the cycle of all of their games. You know, instead of them getting the combat that they want in Genshin, they're getting it in Zenless, which functions very differently from Genshin Impact from what I've heard. So, you know, I guess it's a strategy for them as a company for sure, but it just doesn't really solve the general issue, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Yeah. Hoyoverse, yeah, exactly. Hoyoverse's Endgame is their other games. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, that's pretty much it. It's like, hey, what Genshin lacks, Zenless will provide. What Zenless lacks, Star Rail will provide. What Star Rail lacks, the next game that they work on will provide, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, they're also shaking up the genres too. So they have Honkai Impact 3rd, mission-based. You have Genshin, open-world action combat. You have Star Rail, turn-based RPG. You have Zenless, supposed to be like a combat-oriented roguelite. So like they're just hitting all of the genres and kind of covering the gaps, all of their games. Kind of like a Venn diagram, I would say. Like their games are acting as a Venn diagram where there's some overlap. No one game has everything, you know? It's a great business strategy for sure, but it's definitely going to leave some people wanting more. And another thing too that's crazy is that how like Genshin is so successful, it doesn't need to play by the gacha standards. It does not have to do what other gacha games do because it's Genshin. It's the fucking apex predator of gacha games. Like in terms of its popularity, in terms of its reach, like a lot of people compare like, oh, well, you know, a lot of people compare anniversary rewards, right? A lot of people are like, oh, well, this gacha game did this and they gave this many rewards for their anniversary and they gave this many characters. But it's like comparing apples to oranges. And I made a post about this a week or so ago, and some people had mixed thoughts about it. Some people thought that I was downplaying or underselling games that aren't really open world, and that I was basically saying that they don't deserve to exist because they're not on the same production quality as Genshin. What I basically meant to say was that Genshin has proven itself to be in a league all its own. These other gacha games are competition for each other, but Genshin has gotten so big that it doesn't need to give out the same amount or even better rewards because they have proven through their success, through their numbers, that like what they're doing is working, you know? And so I feel like while other gacha games will have do have permanent content and do cater to their audience in that respect, Genshin's probably thinking, well, we don't even need to be, we're not a gacha, like for them, they probably don't even see themselves as like a gacha subgenre. They probably see like they're viewing themselves as the Hoyoverse. Like, these aren't gacha games, these are Hoyoverse games, and they all kind of coexist. The purpose of their creation is to coexist amongst each other and complement each other, like, and complement each game's weakness with their own strength. And I think that's ultimately how it works, because I'm shocked at how much endgame content there is in Honkai Impact 3rd that's not in Genshin, because by design that's how it was meant to be. So when Genshin comes out, they're like, oh, well, we already put endgame content in our last game, Honkai Impact 3rd, so let's focus something entirely different on Genshin. And then when Honkai Star Rail comes out, they're like, let's add a turn-based option for people who want that. And when Zenless comes out, it's like, well, let's add a rogue-like combat variant, because none of our other games have that. So instead of giving all of their games the same treatment, each of their games is specialized, I would say. Easy win for a company, kind of a different story for the player base. And I'm sorry if I'm rambling, by the way. I have so many, I've been thinking about this for like the last 2 days now. I also feel like for the longest time, for as long as I've played Genshin, the only people that I've ever heard claim that they've wanted repeatable endgame content are content creators. And by virtue of the content creators, their audience, because spoiler alert, streamers and YouTubers' audience are a reflection of them. They watch you because you provide something that is either relatable, formative, or valuable to them as a viewer. So like, you are advocated not just for yourself, but for your audience as well.
It's raining. raining again.
I also understand, but I also know that, like, of course, as a content creator, if you're advocating repeatable endgame content and that's what you focus on, you're also just trying to make sure that you have a job and you going to and enjoying. So I can understand, like, some people's mindset of like, oh, well, they shouldn't focus on repeatable endgame content because the only people that care about that are content creators who are trying to keep their job. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I also don't think Hoyoverse should be guilted into doing repeatable endgame content for people who know damn well that you shouldn't be putting all of your eggs in one gaming basket. A lot of people care about combat in the game more than I would like. Like, I wish some of those people took interest in the story because I do think it's valuable and it enriches the game even more if you know what the hell's going on. You know, different strokes for different folks. I'm not gonna force that on people, and I'm not gonna tell people that their experience is wrong and mine is right because I have no problems and you do. Too bad, so sad. But
It's raining again.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now. I'm just trying to cover as many bases as I can and give as many perspectives as I can because I just really want people to lead with empathy and understanding that just because you have all of your needs met with Genshin doesn't mean that's the same for everybody else. And if someone's upset about something not being in the game and that thing being in the game doesn't take away from your enjoyment, I don't really see what the big deal is, you know? Adding repeatable content isn't gonna take away from my story. And adding more story isn't necessarily taking away from combat. What you really kind of have to expect is that, what does Hoyoverse want? Here's another thing too. I'm sorry, guys. I'm fucking firing on all cylinders today. Here's another thing, too. You know what I really fucking hate hearing? Who asked for this? I really hate hearing that. Whenever Hoyoverse does something for their game, and people say, who asked for this? Let me ask you this, okay? Who asked for Genshin Impact to be created? I don't hear anyone complaining that Genshin was created. You didn't ask for that, but guess what? I guarantee you're happy that it happened. Almost kind of like the people who make the game want to make things that they want to make. I fucking hate when I hear people say that shit, because it's kind of like they don't see the devs and the creators of this game as people or players themselves. All of a sudden it turns into, well, I spent money, so I have a say in what should be in the game or not. That's the most cringiest, like, most frustrating, entitled shit that I've ever heard. And every time I hear it, it goes back until it's like, oh, well, I don't remember you asking for Genshin Impact in 2018 or 2017 or 2016 when you didn't even know it was in development. Some people that are into Genshin probably didn't even know that Honkai existed before it. Nobody asked for it. Nobody asked for Genshin either, but I don't see you guys complaining about that. That's just a little pet peeve of mine, because it's like, Hoyoverse has a right to add new shit or do what they want to do. At the end of the day, everything that's in Genshin, everything that you like in Genshin was never up to you. It was up to the devs. It was up to them to figure out what people like, and then the idea is that you build upon that. You vibe with your audience.
It's raining again.
You understand what they like, and you give them more of that. And in their eyes, combat isn't something that the majority of their players are interested in, so I'm not surprised that they don't focus on that for the long term, despite there being all of the bells and whistles for that content in the game. But I also feel like this game will live or die by the developers, not by you or me. Like, you and me will play this game as long as it continues to keep us interested. And when it no longer keeps us interested, that's not your fault and that's not my fault. That's their fault. There's no chance of that happening. The game feels like it's too big to fail. I do not know. Anyways, that's my spiel. That's my soapbox. I'm pretty sure this video is hella fucking long. I'll probably try to get it out later today or in a couple days, just because this is a very hot topic that a lot of people are talking about, and I just want to express it overall. But yeah, that's just how I feel. I love how that one question just spiraled into an hour-long conversation about this entire situation. I hope that answered most of y'all's questions about my thoughts on the whole matter. I wish people weren't assholes to each other. I also wish that people, I don't know, man, I really do feel bad for some people that didn't get what they wanted out of this game and might never get what they want out of the game, and they don't know if their last 2 years was spent in vain. But I really hope that there's still a semblance of something that you're interested. And if not, completely understand that there's a ton of other games. Maybe Zenless will be their game. Maybe Star Rail will be their game. Maybe another game that's not a Hoyoverse game will be their game. But
I do try to lighten the mood sometimes.
I just really
but
wish things were better.